So we're back to examining the code that was generated by Spring Boot Initializer. We'll close Maven dependencies and we'll look at the Java a little bit of Java code that was generated. This is the namespace that we chose. Remember back in Spring Boot Initializer, and this is the Java code here. So this is called an annotation in Java. So what does an annotation do? And we've seen this with overload. For example, in that annotation adds a little bit of compiler sugar to make sure that your overload is correctly overloading a method that's in the base class, right? That it matches a method signature. It's not required, but it's nice that it has there. This annotation is actually a code package. It's implemented as a class. So you can think of annotations added to classes in Java and into methods in Java as being able to wrap a little bit of wrapper code around that class or around that method. And that's how the methods by which Spring Boot works. It wraps you, by adding these annotations, you're wrapping a little bit of code around your classes and around your methods. So this Spring Boot application is actually a top-level thing. Top-level annotation, and it has several annotations underneath it. The first three are really what's important. The Spring Boot configuration. This announces that this class is able to have Spring Beans. And we'll define Spring Beans a little bit more formally later, but you can think of a Spring Bean as a Java class, a plain Java class that is specially annotated to work as a bean. The next thing is enable auto configuration. So this enables Spring Boot to auto configure code based on its dependencies and based on your code layout. You have to conform to what it expects. And then component scan. This allows the dependency injection component to scan your application for components, mostly Spring Beans, so that the framework knows about your individual classes. So that's the annotation here. A fairly simple annotation that has a lot of power underneath it. This is the class core application. This is the main class where main resides, and that's the entry point for our program, just as always. And then we see the Spring application.run. It must be a static method, and we pass it this class, and then the arguments that came in from the command line, and our Spring Boot application starts running. The other section of pre-generated code I want to visit is in the source test.java here. And here we see the start of unit testing. So unit testing is an ability to take individual units of the application and put them under automated tests. They're becoming more and more important for testing and deployment, so that if you have a good set of unit tests, you can make that part of your deployment environment. So if your application can build, that's one factor. But then it has to also pass its unit tests, and unit tests go along with the application. And we'll write a few unit tests in here to demonstrate this functionality as well that already comes, pre-wired with our Spring Boot application. Next, we'll actually create some Spring Beans and see how dependency injection works in Spring Boot.